Okay, so we're work comp 3025, and it's week 4, lesson 4, part 1, and we're going to be doing this little web welcome app, which basically doesn't really do any actual coding. And you know what? Thank God, because our emulator is not really working. But the great thing is we can use iOS 8 and the Xcode IDE to build this app for the first time. So some of you haven't been able to touch it because last week you couldn't access it, and the week before you couldn't access it, and we only started the week before. So at least this today we'll be able to build this little web app with a couple of label and an image view, and talk about a couple technologies that this thing has. I've put the PowerPoint up on Blackboard if you don't want to follow along on the board, or if you want to do it at your own pace. If you want to test the end result, like I said before, the archive files are all on Blackboard now, so you can actually test each of the week's apps. What we'll be doing today for credit, is actually, you don't have to launch it, right? But I'll be asking you to build your own little welcome app, right, with your own images and labels and stuff like that. I want you to play around and hand it in at the end of the class if you can. So we'll see how it goes. And how are we going to hand it in, you're going to ask? How are you going to hand it in? You're going to take those files, zip them, and send them into Blackboard. And I'll create a little, assignment that we can do within this. We'll take a break. I'll set up the assignment for you guys. I'll give you a little bit of criteria. And clickety clack, you'll have your first assignment in and done, right? Which is what I want to do because I think we got to get something done here, right? Anyway, so let's get this party started. So again, we want to cover some of this stuff. This is right from the book. I won't be able to cover all of these sections because there's a lot. And if you ever read those Deedle books, I don't know if you ever have, but they're packed with stuff. Every chapter is like massive, right? And there's no way I could cover everything from the chapter in one sitting without you guys glazing heavily, right? So we'll cover the basics, right, of some of this stuff, and then hopefully if I can pull it out. There's a lot of things. These are all the objectives of the chapter. Blah 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 blah. Lots of stuff. Okay, but I think what I think you guys should get out of it is let's use Xcode, like really use it, not just watch me do it this week, right? Think about this single view application thing. How do we do that? And then I want you to create your own little app with a couple of controls, right? And figure out how to, the storyboard, how to set things up based on what we're going to do with the welcome app, okay? So very, very simple app. There's no coding here. It's really all about IDE manipulation today and understanding the IDE, the interface, because I think it's important. If we don't do that, then your IDE is going to be fairly, if you know how to surf the IDE or whatever, it's fairly new for everybody, right? Then you're going to have issues. So here's a question. How many people really know how to use the Mac besides the people that are in the room? If you don't know, how about people who don't know, who absolutely don't know how to use the Mac? You have nothing, no idea. So we should probably do for those people, if you don't mind, for the people who know, 5 or 10 minutes of like, hey, here's how you use a Mac, right? Like, Mac ABCs. Can we do that? Would you mind? Right? And I think it might be important for us to do that because if for you guys don't know how to do it, we should kind of name stuff. Because we're going to get to the point where you guys can't do stuff that I do, and you're like, where is that? How do I do that? What does it mean? And I think we need to kind of go there. All right? So 2 seconds. I'm not going to I'm not going to dwell. I'm going to spend 5 minutes on what, how the interface is. Your interface is going to look different than mine, but I'm going to minimize my my stuff here. And if you notice, I've got this bar on the bottom of my screen, just like you would normally have with Windows. On the left, there is no. The one thing about the Mac, there is no Windows Explorer equivalent on the Mac. What we have is a Finder window, and that's what it's called. And if you hover over, you might see a similar setup on the computers at school. Now I'm using Yosemite, so my background and my bar will look different than yours because you're using probably Mavericks of some kind. If I'm not wrong? Am I wrong? I think you guys are using Mavericks, right?
Yeah, 10.9.
10.9. So you're not using the one that I'm using, right? So again, Finder is where you're going to get access to your files and your folders. So let's go there first. If you can have access to Finder, because we're going to have to do some of that right here. All right. So again, Finder is going to give you access to files and folders. And if I was going to, the things that we're used to doing on the PC, we can't do on the Mac in the same way. It's just not possible, right? But there's certain things on the Mac that we can do that, and you can't do on the PC. One thing that I really don't like on the Mac, if I was going to say things that I can do, things that you're able to do on the PC, like for example, if I right-click, I'm going to just create a folder here in the background. I go new folder, right? So if we right-click, and then by the way, if your mouse doesn't allow you to right-click, you can set it up, and you need to do that within your system preferences, right? So this is where it happens, because in the beginning, the mouse context isn't for right-clicking. You have to turn that on, right? So if you go point and click, right, and see where it says secondary click inside your settings, this is where you need to turn that on, or else you're not going to have a right-clickable option. So that's the one thing you need to understand about Macs. They don't come with a right-clickable option. You got to double tap in order for you to pull up the context menu. All right. So that's the first thing. So let's review that, because you need to know that, or else it's going to mess you up, right? But let's say your context menu is on. I can right-click and go New Folder. So here's my new folder. If I go into my new folder, if I double tap and go into my new folder, it's going to bring me into this other window here, just like we would expect from Windows. But if I right-click again, the one thing that I don't like about the Mac, what I liked about Windows, is trying to set up these default files. Like for example, on the Windows, you can say New Text File. And you can't really do that in the same way on the Mac. I can't do that, right? So I can't go New Text File. I can do some other things with the context menu, but nothing to do with a new text file or new default files. That's not available here for me, right? On the top bar, there's a couple things you can do. You can change the views. These are all the view buttons to change the view. And we're going to manipulate that a little bit, so you need to understand that. And here in this little settings bar, you can also create a new folder that's inside this folder. One of the problems is when you create or copy stuff, right? When you drag stuff from one window to the other, you move it. That's another thing you have to be wary of. An example of that would be this. I have this text file, right? And if I take this text file and I drag and drop it into this window, and typically in the PC, you might get an option to copy. Here you don't. It's a natural move. So physically, you'll move this thing into there. Right? There is no option. If I move it back, it's moved out. There is no copy, yes.
If you hold down Option, you can do that.
Correct, right?
And
but I'm saying...
If you hold down Option on a single button mouse, you can right-click as well.
Correct, right. But I just want to show you that you can't do the thing there, right? So some of the stuff you can't do. There's things you can't do, and it's different interface. But overall, like I said to you guys, probably like day one we met on the second week or whatever, is we got to start thinking about being platform agnostic. Don't worry about if you're a Windows guy or PC guy. Don't think about the costs right now. The machine is in front of you, although it's not 100% operational where we want it to be, right? But it is in front of you, and we have access to it. So we use the ones that make sense. Now, again, I might have different features than you do, but the Finder window is one of the ones we're going to use. The other window that we might end up using, or the other app we may end up using a lot, right, that's on here, that I use a lot, I go to Utilities, and I've set my utilities up, is the Terminal window, right? I use Terminal a lot, and if you're a Linux person, then you're gonna look at it. It's gonna be familiar to you, right? So again, you would get that. I'm not sure if it's available to you. Where it's available to you? Is it in the same place? Yeah. Yeah. So you bring up the Terminal window, and sometimes in the Terminal window we can do other functions that we're going to need to when we do any kind of app development right here, right? And it's a full console it's again very Linux-like. If you're a Linux person, again we're using Darwin. That's our backend for this Linux equivalent. But and that's the operating system really what that Mac OS 10 is built upon. But really, if you want to use the terminal window, here you are. Right, so that's the one thing. The other thing I like to do is set up myself, when I set up the Mac, I set it up so that way it has all my internet and everything else is around. You might have the same kind of features here where you can pull up an internet, a grouping of files. You can also change the way the files go. Like for example, if I right click, I can change it instead of a folder, I can make it a stack. And I can change the way that we view the content. And that's really all I'm going to say about the Mac in terms of surfing. So all we need to get to for us is we need to get to the Xcode app. So if you don't know how to get there, again, I have mine on a developer, and I'm guessing it's probably something similar here on the local machine. Yes? Yeah. Xcode, right? So you'd run the Xcode app by single tapping it, like we normally would expect, right? And when we run it, we have a couple of options. If you have any previous programs or projects you're running, they'll appear on the right side, just like any other IDE. Like, for example, Visual Studio, which we like to compare this thing with in some ways. Although there really is no comparison. Right? Not really. Okay, so if you look on the left-hand side, you have a bunch of stuff we looked at last week. One of them was this Get Started with Playground. And if I click this, let's do this one first, please. Get Started with Playground. So you want to test stuff out, and you're programming in iOS. And hopefully this will work for you guys. Is it working for you guys?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Thank God. All right. This is where we can play and learn Swift. If you're going to learn Swift or try something out in Swift, this is a nice, safe place to play. Again, you can choose iOS or OS X, OS 10. We want to use iOS because that's the one we want to do it. Doesn't work?
No debugging.
We need developer.
Still not debugging.
We're debugging.
Cancel? Does it work? Doesn't work at all? Won't even get you in there at all?
Well, hold on.
I know.
I'm very, very disappointed about that one. That's like really bad.
It's like a third of the way into the course, right? Like,
Yeah, it's bad.
We can read.
Oh, I'll take care of you guys.
It just works. So we get 100%.
Well, I'll do my best. Do my best. Anyway, so that is where you would go into playgrounds. But what we're going to do today, and then in the playground you do your Swift stuff.
One character.
But Xcode is where we're going to go. Let's go back into Xcode and go into create a new Xcode project. Right? This is what we're going to do first. Okay? And let's pause here while we go back. I want to talk about the PowerPoint a little bit because it has a few extra pieces of information that I want to go over with you. And here we are. Again, I apologize for the technical issues that we're having, but we will resolve them. So again, we're going to develop this iOS app that comes with the book. It's a very simple app, right? But what you can do is if you want the images, I've put them up on Blackboard. So if you want to download the package from Blackboard, it is that you have the entire archive there. Now, how do you get that from here? It looks a little different when you're downloading again on the Mac than if you do on the PC, right? And it's going to go in a default downloads folder. Typically, that's where it goes, right? So if I was to go up on Blackboard, I'm just going to switch over to another view. And again, all I'm doing here is I'm swiping to go to another window. For you, you may not have that option. But here I'm going to go to a Blackboard, not my Centennial, Blackboard. I love it. And I'm going to go to our course here, which is Mobile and Pervasive Computing. And inside there is your files under your course documents, which should be under your code archive. Okay, and this is where you would download your files. 15 megs, so if you want to do it, if everyone does it right now, it'll make it so we have lots of speed. Do it right now, all at the same time. Come on, it's perfect. Done? So if you download it, if you notice, if I download it, it goes right into my downloads folder. So if you're looking for it, on the left in your Finder window, again, you probably will see it under downloads. Okay, chances are. Hopefully. Makes sense? And of course, that's not what I wanted. That's the syllabus I downloaded. I wanted this one. There we go. Just trying to see what I did wrong. Sorry, guys, I'm a little off because you know what? It makes me really. I'll say it's disappointing. It's a little disappointing, but it's okay. We're gonna get through it. Okay, we're gonna get through it. Okay, so yeah, so here I am, and if I open up the zip file, in here is the one we're going to do. So if you wanted to follow me on it, worst case scenario, as an example, if you can't get it done, and if you want to check it out later on, you can always go through here. We're going to do the welcome app, right? Now there's different ones. If you notice, there's one we're going to do the one that says welcome by itself. There's also a welcome accessible and a welcome localized. They've kind of come up with a few different versions. That give you, it's the same project, but it gives you other options. But what we need from in here, if you look at the project itself, is on the top here, inside your code archive, you have images. And we're going to need these images to create our app. So for example, our images for our welcome app has the bug image and so on. So if you want to follow along with the PowerPoint, you need these images. Okay, so that's why I'm asking you to go there and take care of that now so we won't have to pause later. Okay. Yeah, so if it's underneath, no, it's actually underneath the images folder. Yeah. Okay, so this, and then in there, it's inside the welcome folder, inside the images folder. Okay, so that's one thing. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. So again, we're going to learn Xcode a little bit more for some of us who don't know it. We're going to put together a label. Here's our label component and our image view, and that's really what we're going to do today, because that's all we can do today. Anyway, even if I wanted to do a little bit more with you, not possible. So let's take a look at some stuff. Again, we talked about this a couple weeks in a row, so I'm going to skip through this. We can do inside our interface builder, which is what we're going to see in a second. You can do your labels, your image views, your buttons, your text fields, your sliders, all that kind of stuff that you would normally see in the Android. When you're building Android or any other kind of GUI, you're going to have in there, right? Which we saw already. So I'm going to skip through that. We're going to use UIKit, which is the framework, Cocoa Touch's framework, and we're going to do everything with an interface builder, like we said. I'm just going to keep going through. From an accessibility perspective, there is an accessibility piece to this app. If you were going to follow the book and try and do your accessibility and or the internationalization piece, I'm going to leave that to you. If you've got the book, you can go through that piece. And that what it does is just like on the Android example, if you have this, it's actually the same book. If you get the iOS book from Deedle, and if you get the Android book from Deedle, the great thing about it is you can compare one to the other, the exact same apps done in two different platforms, right? So that's a good thing. And they do the internalization I find it's actually easier on Android than it is on iOS. But that's just my experience. Okay, so let's do this. So we're going to create this. We're going to click this single view application, and I'm just using the PowerPoints as a backdrop. So let's just do that. So I'm going to go back to Xcode, and I'm going to click single view application, click next. And we did this before, but now the people who weren't able to access it last week, at least this week, you can actually go in there and create one. The product name is going to be called Welcome. So let's just put kind of a welcome in there. From an organizational name, you can put, I put my own name in there, but you can also put in an organization name that makes sense to you. Right? Again, from an organizational identifier, you need to put this reverse domain naming. All right, that's why we have to do it. We have to use a com dot whatever the fake domain that you're going to put in there is. If you have a company, you would actually put your company domain in there. And then in the bottom, the bundle identifier will be generated based on what your product name is automatically. We're going to choose, instead of iPhone this time, we're going to choose universal. Right, and we're going to definitely leave use core data unchecked because that adds other functionality that we wouldn't want to touch right now. And we're going to click next. Okay. Okay, we're going to decide where to put this this puppy, and I have it on my desktop that I have a couple things already. I'm just going to name this thing. It's going to be called Welcome, and it's going to hit my desktop. I'm not going to add this to source control right now. I'm going to leave it unchecked. Okay, it says Xcode wants to use your confidential information stored in Apple in your keychain. I don't know, you might have that, you may not have that. I'm going to say always allow because I'm okay with that. And for now to move forward. So you should get to this screen right here. Yes? Okay, let's get to this screen. Finally, we're all on the same bloody page. All right. Okay, so, what was that?
There'll be someone that's not on the right page.
Don't do it, man. Don't say it, man. Don't say that. You're cursing me, man. Okay, don't do it. But not on purpose, I'm sure. All right, so we did this piece. Let's talk about the IDE a little bit. I know we kind of glossed over it the last couple of weeks, but you guys couldn't access it anyway, so there's no point. Really, there's three major areas here that are in the IDE for Xcode 6. You have the Navigator area here. So when we talk Navigator, we mean the left piece. We say Editor area is the middle, and it's always there. It might show different things on the Editor window, but the Editor window is always available. It's just different things in the Editor window. Utilities is this piece, and there's also, in the same section, there's also a context-sensitive properties area near the top, right? So that's what you're going to see in this on the Xcode IDE. So if we go back to it, here I'm on the IDE, and if you notice, there's right now, I'm highlighting the welcome. Here's my welcome right now, right? And if you notice, it says 2 targets, iOS SDK 8.1, right? So that's why it's showing almost like a manifest, like we talked about before. And it's asking me to fix the issue that I'm not a developer, and right now I'm going to leave it the way it is. Okay, so that's the first piece that we have to get to. Okay, again, let's talk about some of the things that are on the top of the Navigator, so you know what it is. Again, we saw this last week, the project. This is the symbol for project. It looks very similar to what we would normally see on a Windows machine with almost like a folder, if you will. That's what it would look like. We have this symbol here that allows you to browse your project and look at classes and methods and properties and so on. And right now, if we look at that, what that is, right? That's this symbol right here. And if you notice, the only ones we have available to us are app delegate, right? And we also have our view controller, right? Our view controller. And if I click on any one of these, you're going to actually have access to, looking at the actual code in the back end. All right. But again, we want to go back to our folder, this project view right here, right? Again, if you hover over, this is the windows we're talking about. Here's show the find navigator, and show the find navigator. See if I can go right to it. Again, you can look through your file. If you're looking for something, that's what it allows you to do. Issues, obviously, warnings and errors, that's where it comes up. Tests, if you have unit tests, we're not going to cover unit tests too much here in this course, only because it requires almost a course to cover unit testing if you don't know how to do it. Have you guys done any unit testing, by the way, here at no, that's unfortunate. Really? You did some unit testing in Java?
Yeah, we did.
You did?
Unit.
Huh? Oh, okay.
Nobody remembers that we did apparently, but we did.
Okay. How about, so you did do it?
Not for our class.
Not for them. Who did you have?
Andrew was teaching.
You had Andrew? Oh, but you guys didn't do it? Oh, that's unfortunate. And what about QA? You guys do any quality assurance? No? Okay. So anyways, let's just gloss over that one. But if this allows you to do unit testing, and it's great. We're not going to talk about that. Obviously, we don't have time. We only have now 10 weeks to do everything with a broken system. So debugging, definitely we're going to get into once we're able to actually get in and do anything with the debugger. And a breakpoint, obviously we can manage our breakpoints and set them. Okay, there's also log files. If we want to look at log files, click the report button. So again, it's all on the left pane. I hate when it does that. It's all on the left pane. There we go. Up here. This is what we're looking at right now. So each of the windows, so this is the Navigator window, and each of the windows has a different use. All right, that's what these things are on the top. Okay, so right now there's no breakpoints, we have no logs, and we just got a fresh app. That's what we're doing right now. Okay, and if you notice, because I'm clicked on the project side, my context on the right-hand side applies to what I'm clicked on. Right? I click here. Now my context is going to change, like we saw before. All right. I know, you guys are glazing already. Okay, we got the editor window, and again, I think one of the things to note about this, when we're in the editor window, this thing here on the top, you might see it differently than me. But again, this is the regular editor, this is the assistant. And if I do that, it does kind of a split screen, and we're going to be using this today when we build our app, because what it allows us to do is we can actually do a preview pane that we're not talking about actually in the on the PowerPoint. So I'm going to show you how to do a preview pane. And again, it's all around our context and what we're going to be doing. Okay, and I can add as many of these preview panes as I want by pressing the plus button or getting rid of them by pressing the X. Okay, again, the normal view, this is the assistant. So almost like a split screen if I want to do that. Okay. We don't have any source control. The document isn't under source control because I took it off, so that's why we're not having that. And it's trying to load by revision, but of course there is no revision. So let's go back to the way it was. That's what this is, source control. So I didn't put my document in source control because you probably wouldn't have. Right? Okay, so we kind of covered that part really quickly. And I'm going to let you read that part. The Xcode toolbar is important because we kind of covered this a little bit last week. Again, you run it with the kind of this play button up here. You can stop debugging, just like we do in Visual Studio by pressing the stop button. And you can choose which device, unfortunately for you guys it will not work, but which device you will emulate with the iOS emulator or simulator right here. Right? Also, on the right-hand side, you see these little buttons, which are, from an iOS perspective, is right here. And you can just turn off or remove or add sections of your IDE, so that way you can give yourself more space. Okay, that's all it is. Just want to get that done. So we're getting to the heart of it, right? Some keyboard shortcuts. if I want to create a new project, and there's some more, I actually added into this link that's from the book to get a bunch of keyboard shortcuts for Xcode. We're going to learn more of them as we go through each app. But again, if you want to create a new project, Shift and Command N, and then the regular things that we would normally think of, that works actually in Windows. Again, instead of Command, you use Control. It's very simple, very similar. One of the things that you haven't seen is this Command B when we want to build our project, right? That's different. And if we want to build and run, the command is Command R, right? So those are the things we might want to do. So if I go back to it right now, I'm going to go back to Xcode, and we have nothing really to run. But here's my main storyboard. My main storyboard is kind of empty. But if I do Command B, right, it's going to say building the project. I want you guys to try it. Use Command, that little funky symbol, and B to build the project. Huh? You guys did it?
Yeah.
Oh, you sent it?
You can build.
Oh, you can build.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Sorry. Yeah, thank you for that. I was assuming that you can build, right? Build and run, though, Command R, right? This is where you might have a problem, right? And when you press Command R, it's going to bring up the simulator, right? And now for me, it's iPhone 6, and you guys are going to have an issue, yeah?
And it's a black screen.
Yeah, give it a time. These things are running
Give it a second.
hard drive disks and SSDs, so they're like.
I'm SSD. I'm SSD.
Yeah, see.
So
I
it's
like
gonna
open up this thing and I'm like, what is wrong with this computer?
Let's wait for it to come on, right?
There we go.
Okay, and you're gonna get this. You're gonna get this cancel screen, and if you cancel enough times,
No, it doesn't go away. It's just that you can view it, you can't debug it.
but you will view, right?
Yes, it will.
Okay,
It will
so
break if something's wrong.
that's great. That's great. So, and here, if you notice, it's running. The simulator is running, and if you want to stop the simulator, again, I can press the stop button, and the simulator stops. Okay, and sometimes, just like we do with Visual Studio, we need to clean the project. Does anyone know why we need to clean the project? Why clean is important? Yeah.
Sometimes when you compile it, something might break in the background, and certain code will get messed up. So that when you run it, you think everything's fine, but it's not.
It's funny that every compiler has this issue, and every compiler, regardless if you're Apple or if you're on Visual Studio, and I think these are two, or even on Eclipse, whatever you're running, there's a clean option, right? There's a clean option for that reason, because there's different compilers that mess you up, and they'll linger, they'll stick around. And sometimes cleaning the project and rebuilding it is easier and better. We may need to do that at times if it's not running as we go forward. Okay, by default, when we go in here, it's going to be configured. All apps are configured for by default for portrait and landscape. What Apple tells you not to do is configure it for upside down. Okay, that's what they tell you not to do. And the reason for that is because this is the reason they've given. Let's quit this for a second. The reason they've given for not running it that way, and if I was to to look at my storyboard for a second. So here's my storyboard, and if I was to go back to this view here, if you notice, I have portrait, upside down, landscape left, landscape right, and Apple recommends, this is a recommendation from Apple, that you turn as many of these pieces on as you should. You should do this, so that way if I turn my device in different orientations, you're good. But they don't want you to do this, because if you're doing this, I can't answer the phone. That's the reason why they tell you not to do it upside down. All right. Now there are going to be some apps that you could certainly do upside down if you're playing a game of some sort. Like, it shouldn't matter if you're playing a game if you're holding it this way or this way. But again, Apple discourages it from a kind of a best practices perspective. It's there to turn it on if you'd like to, but they don't recommend it. Okay. Okay, back we go. Okay, let's take a look. So again, upside down, and again, we were told not to support it. Again, we want to provide an app icon, but because iOS now supports so many different viewports, icons can come in many sizes. All right, this is very interesting as well. So we have something called the asset catalog that's part of our project, and the way we can do it is to turn that asset catalog on. We have to be able to view the asset catalog, right? And let's do that. Let's go down to the if we scroll down to the app icons. And if we do that right now, let me see if I go back here.
You know, I really think they should start switching to like an SVG or something like that for the icons. All of them use those, like the same thing. Even Android, and of course Android has like a billion sizes, and it's really annoying. If you use an SVG, it just scales to whatever.
The problem with scaling is it's computationally expensive, right? So that's the thing. So what happens is, just like we do in video games, if we're going to make a video game together tomorrow, right? I like your thinking though, right? But right now, maybe in the future, computationally, things won't be an issue at all. Like it'll be 2
I think
seconds.
we're hitting that point now. Everything's
Almost.
64
We've
bit.
been saying that on the web for like 10 years.
Yeah, but it's still computationally expensive for doing that stuff. So when I scale, if I was going to make an image, would I rather scale it or would I rather have a fixed image and swap it out? I still would rather swap it
I
out.
guess you have higher performance. I
Yeah,
guess.
so that's the
It's
reason
just
why. Right?
inconvenience, I guess, for the developer. You're like,
From a developer, it sucks. So if we want to use the asset catalog, we scroll down here inside of this little manifest, right? And when we scroll down, we see this use asset catalog. It's right underneath this app icon, right? Now I can use the asset catalog, and if you notice it says migrate launch images to asset catalog. If I go say migrate, right? I can do my launch image as well. So I can change my launch image here as well. But right now, all we care about is our app icon. We got to print this little arrow here. If I click it, it's going to take us to this app icon area. Are you with me?
I am with you.
Good, because some people will fall behind at this point. If you notice, we got all kinds of little positions for app icons, right? Like you said, Jean-Luc, there's all kinds, right? And the reason why is we have 1x, right, 2x, and 3x for different kinds of, to support different sizes. Well, now we have to choose, as an example, what we want to support. And if you notice, there's different ones, different situations. The Spotlight, right? The iPhone app for iOS 7 and 8, 60 point, and so on. There's different kinds of app icons. And that's why I asked you to go to, if I was going to go to the, you have your assets, right? This is where you want to go and grab that stuff from Deedle, yeah.
I do have a question with the 40 points and 60 points. Is the point of measurement not being a designer? I'm not 100% sure about it.
Well, it is, and it's
72 points an inch.
so this guy. See, type this.
So it's not
this.
based on.
Oh, you know, typesetter error. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
12 picas per inch.
There we go.
Like,
So at the end of the day, what we have is we have this 1x, 2x, and 3x, right? So if I was going to give you a highlight of what they all mean, 1x icons, right, is 1 point is equal to 1 pixel, right? 2x obviously is 2 points is equal to 2 pixels. So 1 point is equal to 2 pixels. And 3x only for the iPhone 6 right now is 1 point is equal to 3 pixels. I don't think 3x works on any other device yet, as if this writing in this video that we're doing, right? So that's where you see 1x, 2x, and 3x, right? So being that as it is, if I was going to set up an icon for a certain size, right? An example would be, let's say, the iPhone Spotlight, iOS 7, iOS 8 section, right? It says that the icon would have to be, right, 40 points, and it's got to be 40 points wide and tall, right? Well, if I was going to put together our own little icon for it, I make 40 by 40, 40 pixels by 40 pixels for 1x. For 2x, it's got to be 80 by 80. And for 3x, it's going to be 120 by 120. That's what it works out to be, right? So now we have all these icons that we can we're going to drag and drop them from our Finder window in a second into this area here. What I'd like you to do now, instead of me talking my head off, is I want you to do it yourself. I want you to, the PowerPoint presentation is online. This is part of the lab component. I want you to, you've downloaded the code archive. I want you to follow this tutorial here, and I want you to take the icons and attach them into the, as images, into the app icon section, into the assets that we have over here. So we have our app icons, and again you can also have clicked images.x assets, XC assets, and these app icons. I want you to follow the tutorial and get these icons in here. In fact, maybe what you want to try also, worst case scenario, is a little bit of intuition. If I've got my app icons and they're all listed here, and luckily they are. Here's Deedle Orange 40 by 40, and I know it requires 40 point. My guess if I was not going to even read the PowerPoints, is if I dragged and dropped this thing over here, then it would accept, and it does. Now that's 2x, right? 40 by, that's in the wrong place, right? It's in the wrong place. Because that's 2x and 3x, right? So you want to put it where it says 1x, because 40 by 40 is the actual version. 2x and 3x has got to be 80 by 80, right? And they should have icons like that. Like, for example, here's a 2x. Here's a 2x for 80 by 80, and there's another one. So let's try and do this on our own. Go ahead. I know it's not rocket science, guys, and you're like, all I did today, Mom, was I went to Tom and I built like some icons, put them across. Go ahead. At least you've done this piece because you need to practice this because you're going to do your own, right? And this is why you also need to know Finder, because if you don't do Finder, then
Sorry, same thing here. You have 2 times 29. So that equals 4 is 58. That's 1 times 29.
you should all be done soon, right? I'm just going. And what if you don't?
Then it's really annoying. I mean, I know how to use Photoshop.
And this is the rub, right? This is the rub. Don't know how to do stuff. It's nice to know, right? Okay, I've gone really slow and I'm done. Are you guys done?
Yes.
All right. You beat me. I know you did. I went slow, like I said. So, okay. So these are all the app icons that we're going to use for our app. So when we launch our app, again, you won't see this because you're not running the simulator. But basically, this is the app that you'd see on your phone, right? So it's going to be sized according to the image. Let's take a look at a quicker, like a kind of a closer look at this. I'm going to pull up an 80 by 80 with fireworks. Here, you can look at. I think you might have fireworks in front of you as well, right? Because you guys have all the Adobe products since you guys are on the Mac Lab. Let me take a look. I'm pretty sure you do. Now, do you guys have CC in front of you, or is it just CS6? Okay. So this is what my, again, what I see when I see the Deedle icon. If you notice, at 80 by 80, if I'm not wrong, that's what this is, 75 by 75. Again, a little grainy, and the reason for that is because when it goes back down to normal size, here's like 100% size, you really can't tell, right? So it's not bad. I don't like it. I'm not really a fan of the whole bug thing, like their corporate symbol. One thing I do like about it is that if you notice, because it's a PNG file, from a design perspective, we can have transparencies for the app icons, which is something we want to do. So you don't want to make necessarily a square app icon. That would be bad, right? I mean, sometimes it's okay if you have if it's your theme, but here we're using this round app icon. Are you able to open it with fireworks? Do you have fireworks in front of you? Yay!
Did they drop support for fireworks?
They did drop support for fireworks. They don't have it anymore for CC. Okay, cool. So we've done that piece. And I just wanted to go through it. The launch screen, way back in the day, it used to be just an image. Nowadays, it's something that's resizable. You can put resizable text and graphics in the launch screen. So when you launch your iOS app, I'm just going to go back over here. Here's my launch screen. And right now, if you notice, there's this welcome. It's going to meet the same requirements as my, or it's going to match up to the basis of my app. The challenge with this is that if I want to change this, to me personally, I think this would be pretty boring, right? So I'd probably want to add in something, some kind of image, you know, kind of a loading image, something like that. Maybe Jean-Luc's face, you know, something. Oh, okay. I'll say it's Kevin's face. I'll say Kevin's face. Kevin's face.
Look, you don't want to push away customers with this.
We can't do it. We can't push away customers. Some kind of, but realistically, some kind of loading screen is what we normally see when we have our this because sometimes all of our assets are loading, and we want to have some kind of loader. And we see this in games, even on the web and anywhere else. Sometimes it's fairly quick, like there's no loading time because the app isn't that complex. Even for us right now, if I was to do a Command R for run, right? I'm just saying for me, right? I can do it. When I pull up, it comes fairly quickly, and I don't see that start screen too long. You won't see it at all because, yeah, it's not a good thing, right? If I press the home key, as an example,
How do you press the home key?
you have to go to the hardware, and you go home or Shift Command H.
Or in our case,
You can't get to it.
The emulator has to play.
he's got his own thing, so he's out there.
And if you notice, I've got the tip calculator one that I opened up last time. I've got this one that we built just for laughs, right? This last time. And if I hold down my my mouse on it, it gives me that same shaky lady thing that the iOS our iOS thing does. Yeah, I'm sorry to say that, but that's what it is, right? So if I click on this thing, it'll actually delete my app and remove it from my iOS simulator. Now you may not have the ability to do that at this stage. Again, Shift Command H is would be the shortcut on the simulator for the home button on your phone, right? Because we can't really simulate or emulate the home button. Press the button, Shift Command H. All right. So this is what our app would look like, and if I double click on it, then it takes me right back to nothing because there's nothing there right now. But it does run without errors, and that's the idea, right? Let's see if we can do this. After we do this, we'll take a short, like 10-minute break, and then I'll come back and I'll put together a little assignment for today, right? And let's see if you guys can actually do it with the machine in front of you. How about that? Okay, so it's almost there. We're almost there. We're almost there. We're almost there. So again, we want to provide multiple images like it says for each window. We've kind of done this, and for the bug, we want to develop this idea of creating almost like a bug image set. And I think doing that, what we want to try and do is almost like it's a grouping of images that we want to do. And so if we go back to the Xcode simulator, if you notice if I click on image X assets this time on the left, XC assets, if I click onto it, here, if you notice on the left, I can double click and rename app icon to call it whatever I want, right? So I can kind of go in here and go bug. Oh, not boo, bug, Tom, bug. Not G, bug, bug, for God's sake, G, hey G. That's the bug. And so what we're doing is we're naming our image set. That's all we're saying here. So this is our image set for our app icon, the bug, okay? That's an important piece to get. Okay, I'm just going to skip through for a second. Let's talk about the storyboard a little bit. One of the things to know about the storyboard is, and you wouldn't know this because it's so unobtrusive, right? When you first start looking, that's what I'm saying. In this particular case, from an IDE perspective, if I go back to Xcode for a second, and here as I'm hitting the storyboard, I got to actually click on the storyboard on the left, main.storyboard, right? On the bottom for the storyboard itself, I'm just going to kind of zoom down. I'm pinching here so I can get lower, right? On the bottom here, if you notice, of the storyboard, there's these extra buttons. Now, again, very unobtrusive. When you look at them at the beginning, you're like, hey, what's that? It's not like up here like we normally see all the other ones. And they're not color-coded or anything like that down here. But they're super important. There's the things that, this is the alignment, how you align stuff on the storyboard. So if you want to create almost like a adaptive layout, if you will, you do it with these controls down here. You can set up constraints and pins and everything else, and you can resolve auto layout issues by clicking this little button right here automatically, right? So it's really super important if you're creating a layout that you understand what these things do, this behavior down here. So let's just to fast track instead of following everything on the PowerPoint, because again, we're almost like running out of time for the first hour. I want you guys to go in here on the bottom. And again, I'm just going to click this. There's a bunch of little icons here. This is code snippets like we said last time. And this little circle here is where you can get all of your objects. This is the objects area here, right? The object library. And if I want to search, I'm going to search for image view. So here's my image view, right? And what I want to do here is I want to drag and drop this image view onto our storyboard. So we're just going to drag and drop this in here. And of course, it ain't working for me. Let me just pinch and zoom out again. There we go. Now, if you notice, my image view takes up a large piece of my screen, and I don't need it to. And if you look on the right-hand side here, it shows you the frame rectangle, right? That's the frame rectangle for my image view. And if you say it says UI image view on the right-hand side, right? On the left-hand side here is it tells you your layout. So here's my layout. Do you see this? Do you guys see the same view that I see on the left-hand side? Maybe because you have to turn this thing on down here on the left. See this little icon, show document outline? Turn that document outline on now. Right?
Magically, I see what you see.
Thank you.
Yes.
That document outline is super important. That actually shows you all of your constraints that you add to your images, as well as you can look at both the view controller's view. This is the view controller's view. If I click onto it, that's the view of the view controller, the background pretty much, right? And then I can click on my image view. If you notice on the right, you're going to get a different context-sensitive menu for different things because they're different. So if you notice right now, my X and Y coordinates are kind of off, right? They're like at -16 and -85, and my width and height as a default is 600 by 600, right? So you can adjust these things right here. Right now I don't have any constraints. I've got my default constraints in here. I believe, just to go back to this for a second, it tells us what they want us to put it at. I'm just going to go here so we can get to it. And it talks about the same kind of stuff. On the right-hand side, we clicked on the object area there for us to get objects, and we can call up things like buttons and images and so on, like we showed you before. This is what they look like. And again, in the PowerPoint, it tells you what each of these things are. So they're labeled just in case if you have to go back from a reference card perspective and look at this, they're here. Okay? So we want to drag and drop our, I'm just going to skip ahead here, because again, I don't want to, here's our image view, and we'll go to step one. So we want to select the attributes in the attributes inspector here, right? And like it says, and in the utilities area, which is up here, right? So here's our attributes. This is our size inspector. This is our attributes inspector. So again, all of these buttons here, like there's tons and tons of buttons to me that are hidden. And if you haven't used the Xcode IDE ever, right? When you look at this thing for the first time, you're like, oh, why is it like this? Who set this up, right? Because it doesn't make logical sense to a Windows developer, because we're used to Windows, the way Windows looks. But you can't be when you're doing iOS stuff. You got to kind of conform to what they're doing. So if I click on this, if you notice, it tells me, you know, is there an image that I can load up? Right now, there isn't an image associated to it. We're going to put one in there, and we can show if it's highlighted or not, what's highlighted, if there's an image that's highlighted, and so on. And what's the view? Right now, our view is scale to fit. So scale to fill, which is something we may be changing in a second. Okay, so that's the first thing. So in our image view, we're going to select that. And the next one, I made this really big for us, is click the drop-down arrow in the image field and select the bug image set, right, that you added in the asset column. And I don't know if we did that. I think we missed that piece.
We haven't added the asset.
Let's go back to the asset catalog and add that in. So the way to get to that is, and bear with me while I do that, is you go back to Xcode and you go back to this piece. And if you look at the asset catalog, you scroll down, here's my source icon, right? And I notice I have a bug. This is my asset catalog for the bugs. Now it should appear, right?
Now we've got images. Do we have to? Oh, Where'd you go?
right here. So all I did was I went to here on the left, and when I go down, I go to the when I go to app icons and launch images, right? Again, my default launch screen file is launch screen, but I can change that to whatever I want. I can go right to storyboard if I want, so no launch screen, right? This is what this enables me to do. I can change my launch image source to something else if I click this, if I press this little button over here. And I can change my app icon source from bug. We set this catalog up for bugs, right? Now it should be available to us, right? Like I said, if we go back into our storyboard and we click on the image itself, if I click the image view, and of course I don't have that as an option. So let us take a short break while I fix that problem and come back, because I don't have that right now. I need a break, and I'm sure you guys do too.